Welcome back to part 2 of our delicious conversation with Tim Munden. Tim is an award-winning Chief Learning Officer with Unilever, a brand that has over 400 other brands under its umbrella. Tim today is a coach, a speaker, a facilitator, and a designer of transformational experiences. Tim's purpose is to nurture profound human possibility. He works with organizations worldwide of a range of sizes to help them get ready for 21st century business, 21st century leadership. And what's more, he ran his methodology for finding purpose at Unilever, and he applied it to be implemented with 56,000 employees. And we've talked a lot in part 1. And by the way, if you didn't catch part 1, I highly encourage you to go back, because we talked about what drives Tim, how he came to this place, his unusual childhood and what that led to in the military and then on to business and the contradictions with that. We talked about his brush with death. But what we've also spoken about a lot is what is it that drives us and how do we get in our own way, and a lot about how we are hanging on tooth and nail to an idea of leadership that is dead in the water and is actually going to stop you from being a highly successful organization moving forward. In part 2 here, we're going to get into the impact of what purpose actually means. Just summarize what we talked about last time, which is this idea of being self-aware and the need to do this work. And I talked about the resistance that a lot of leaders have with it. And there seems to be, within the leader's mind, this separation between self-awareness, self-development, and performance. It's like, well, I can either do an either or, it's either this or that. Let's jump in right there, Tim. Let's take that one on head first.
Yeah, I think you put it brilliantly. It is still a feature of many leaders thinking that high performance comes from the pressure you can put on people to do their jobs right, and this assumption that without pressure, people are going to goof off and underperform. And the reality is actually, we've noticed since the Yerkes-Dodson curve of the early 20th century that to get high performance is an optimal level of what the psychologists call arousal. And so you've got to get just the right level for that person in that environment, etc. And that takes awareness, which we'll come on to. But the idea that unless you continually put pressure on people, they won't perform, leads us to then build organizations that are structured, full of control. What they're now turning into is organizations that are slow, in which decision-making is far from the client and the customer, and they underperform. So this kind of what you think rightly described as the kind of 20th century dual age vision of an organization is progressively underperforming. Not only is it underperforming by the 20th century's metrics, it is definitely underperforming by the 21st century's metrics, which is that they contribute to social and environmental justice and well-being more outside of the walls of that organization. And of course, that 20th century model fails because it was based on the idea of the organization as a separate entity, a machine in and of itself. We now know that that is an illusion and that we live in networks and ecosystems in which there is, as well as competition, a massive level of interdependence. And certainly all of us fundamentally dependent on the natural environment for our well-being and our resources. And if we destroy it, we will be destroying our own organization.
So that brings up something that I think is really interesting in the work that you do. And I loved it in our previous conversation, because part of that machine mentality, that industrial age mentality, is you are the workers and we pay you to be here to work, to produce, as I said, widget mentality. And we are living in a business world today, as we record this going into 2024. We're living in a world today that is plagued with post-COVID, great resignation, quiet quitting. And of course, it's not new, it's just gotten bigger. Massive disengagement. So let's talk about the impact of, I said, you implemented a 56,000 employee-wide program to help people find their purpose. And just as sort of juxtaposition for people to understand here, people or organizations will bring in people like me or you to help them find their purpose as an organization. Well, let's take this to everybody. It's like, well, let's find our purpose and then we'll communicate that to everybody. And I think that that's important, certainly. But Unilever did something else. They said, let's bring it to everybody. So talk to us about that. Talk to us about bringing it to everybody, and tell us a little bit. We talked about, let's look at the metrics of this. What is the impact of this? What happened as a result?
So the belief that we had was that a purpose-driven company needs purpose-driven people. A lot of great work had been done defining the purpose of the company to make sustainable living commonplace, and a huge amount of work had been done with senior leaders in giving them the chance to discover their leadership purpose. So far, so wonderful. But the challenge was, how do you unlock that at scale in the organization so everyone can have a chance to connect to their own sense of, because the magic happens when the individual says, here's what's meaningful to me, and wonderful, I can express that in this organization with its organizational purpose is not in itself enough. And the risk you run of having a wonderful organizational purpose, but without allowing people the space, creating the space for people to positively connect to it, is a purpose gap opens up. And people feel, well, what about me? How do I make my own purpose felt here? To become a purpose-driven organization, you need it embedded in your strategy, embedded in your leadership, and embedded in your culture. So our solution partly to embedding in the culture was, let's give everyone the space to discover their purpose. We generated a one-day workshop, which we tested, which allowed people to go through a process of, in groups, reflecting on themselves, their experience, their values, what shaped them, and come to a purpose statement at the end of that day with a huge level of success. The people came to the end of the day. Most people came to a good summary of it. The reason you can get to 60,000 is we were training people in the community to run it for each other. And that's a methodology I still use with other clients. And that's really important. And by the way, I think part of the 21st century way of transforming organizations is to empower people in the organization to do it themselves. We did it with well-being workshops. We did it with mindfulness. We did it with mental health. We did it with purpose. Train people in the community to do this. We then, because this was coming from a belief, and there is data out there, there's already data out there, we wanted to know for ourselves what was the impact of this. So we asked a university to do randomized controlled trials 6 months after, what is the impact on people? And it's phenomenal. 49% higher levels of motivation, willingness to go the extra mile, 33% higher satisfaction with their work. And the one that I always find incredible, 27% higher satisfaction with their lives. So one-day workshop and a greater sense of connection to team, to colleagues, to boss, to teams. And now data starting to show that it's higher productivity. It is everything that organizations need right now. Engagement, the fuel to motivate people to upskill, to learn and to grow, which is a massive priority. Cohesion in a hybrid post-COVID world. This works for a whole number of them. And whilst it's not a panacea, I think it is a signal that when we start to look after and activate the deeply human, unsurprisingly, humans perform well, grow well, have well-being in it. And in that, the perform is part of it. There is no conflict, I feel, deeply between the deeply human and the highly performing. There is no conflict. And we have to just switch out of that mindset. I think the research that's emerging.
Well, I mean, back in the day when Jim Collins did Good to Great, they showed that companies that were purpose-driven performed 1,200% better in their stocks. And that's great, but that was a company purpose. And I still think that's very important. But the distinction here, which I think is most important, and it's certainly part of my work in building cultures of belonging, is if your people know their own purpose, they will, and this is neuro-linguistic programming, they will jump across the gap to find out how they can fulfill their purpose in this organization. And at the same time, they will also jump across the gap and go, this is not for me. And those are the people you don't want there, which is great. So what you're left with is a bunch of people who really go, this is a great place for me to do that. And when that's done, they'll go somewhere else. That's fine.
Exactly.
Or they'll say, I'm not interested in doing any of that. And those are the people who've been dragging you down anyway. They've already been actively disengaged. In case you don't know what actively disengaged is, I know you do, but I'm just going to reiterate, it means the horse is pulling in a different direction than the other horses. It's like they're actively trying to take you down. You don't want those people, even if they appear to be doing the job. So the importance of this piece, I can shout from the rooftops, and so can you, and I know you will. But the bottom line is the data came in, and it was independent data, right? This was the London School of Economics, is that correct? Who did the research on this, independent of Unilever, and came up with these numbers. Could you repeat those stats again? I know you just gave me 3. Just give them, because I just want everybody to sort of hear that again.
Yeah, 49% higher motivation, the kind of willingness to go the extra mile. 33% higher satisfaction with their work. 27% higher.
27% higher satisfaction with their own lives. How many people do you know who are just miserable at work?
But there's a reason for that.
Like, who work for you. They may not tell you because you're a boss, but the truth of the matter is, we know from the research, most people feel like wage slaves. They don't want to be there. So if you could increase the value in their lives, so they feel like their lives are more satisfying, aren't they coming to work in a better space? Aren't they more productive? Of course they are. Because as Tim said, there's no separation between this root knowledge of yourself, this being connected to your own purpose, and performance. It's not one or the other. It's very much hand in hand. Twins, if you will.
Yeah. And let's go another step. When you help human beings be fully themselves in work, you embrace their purpose, allow them to make a connection to the organizations. You also get another benefit, which is people then realize and naturally will start to behave more humanly and will stop doing things that we have known happen in every organizational scandal, where at some point people go, look, I've just got to behave like this because that's what the organization wants or needs. I'm cutting myself off from the world outside, and we're just going to, we're going to missell this or falsify that. You're less likely, I actually believe, to have that when people are bringing their whole human being to work, because you're not allowing them the space to think, suppress some of that stuff. Yeah, suppress some of that stuff. We don't do that here. We just want performance. You're saying, no, bring all of yourself. Bring all of yourself, and then we will get better outcome.
And now let's do another pushback. And the pushback on this side is, you and I talked about this in our last conversation that was not recorded, which is this piece around, it's become in vogue to look for your why/purpose. Simon Sinek wrote a great book about it. Simon's work is good work. But my opinion is, a lot of people have taken on this idea of why, or they say we've got our why, or we've got our purpose, but they really haven't. And so that lack of integrity is read by their employees, and they don't think it is. And one other thing I just want to say to that is, I know because I've done it, I've worked with companies, I've helped them to get to the real why, what I call the why of their why, their true purpose. But human beings tend to get lazy. And so there's a need to go back to the gym, if you will, to work that muscle again. And so I'm working with a company right now that I did that work around their purpose 8 years ago. They had a magnificent shift. And I'm talking to one of the partners last week, and he's like, I feel like we're really struggling. And I go, we haven't done any more purpose work in 8 years. And he's like, well, didn't we have it? I go, yeah, but if you went to the gym and got in wicked good shape and then you stopped going for 8 years, would you expect to keep good shape? And he goes, no. And I go, well, it's the same thing. It's a mental, emotional, psychological muscle that has to be worked. I know I'm just throwing a lot at you there. So talk to us about that, the lack of integrity to go to the real why as opposed to the surface one, and then the need to keep that in tip-top shape.
So I think we've got a little bit lost in having a purpose. And so I meet people, and I meet lots of wonderful young people to the age of my kids. And I was sitting having a chat a few years ago in the kitchen at home with a lovely young person, graduated, brilliant. And we started talking about purpose. He said, look, I've not got a purpose. I need to get one. No. You're human. You have purpose. You just need to explore it. We don't want people to be walking around trying to have purpose. We want them to live and lead purposefully. And that is a different thing. It's not a thing you have. It's a way of being. And it's a continually evolving way of being in which you're listening to yourself as it evolves and as you learn and you grow. And I think the other thing that living and leading purposefully does is it gives you one eye on the espoused purpose versus the actual purpose. Because what happened in my own story was I thought my purpose was to fight for justice and champion transformation, and I had all this kind of mighty stuff. My actual purpose was don't die with shame.
Whoa, just stop, because that is like, to get that. And because I had the same experience when I fell off the mountain. If you'd have asked me 5 seconds before I fell, is your life on purpose? I would have said absolutely, and I could have said it. But it wasn't my real purpose. I just didn't know that. And I don't think that you probably knew don't die with shame was the actual driving purpose. So say that again, because I want people to get that. That's so profound.
It's the difference between your espoused and actual purpose, or it's about understanding that we're all messy and you probably have a number of things going on in there. I've used different processes over the years in youth leadership development and in organizational and different methodologies. What they all do is basically help the person take a look at themselves to see what's there and to go, that is what's most truthfully me, and this is what I'm now going to try and live most deeply in my life. That's what we're doing. You're not making a purpose. You're exploring what is there and trying to find that which you really believe to be truest about yourself and to try and live that. And of course, it's rather like riding a unicycle. It's a dynamic balance and continually finding where the edge is, where you need to continue to refine it. Because the other thing about purpose, it often isn't taught, is I think there are 2 dimensions of purpose, which is the long-term deep life thing, and there's the in the moment, what's your intent? And that is also important. So I used to use my purpose for helping me in the moment take difficult decisions. I'm under pressure. There's a danger I'm going to trigger into some behaviors that aren't good. My purpose helps me to go, hang on a second, reshape. If I'm here to nurture deeply human possibility, how do I want to respond right? So I think of that sometimes as intent, and then purpose is the deeper kind of life sense. I find that also very helpful. And why that matters is because one of the things that can get in our own way is when we have a magnificent purpose, where when triggered, we show up completely differently. And people are going to go, hey. And so we're now getting to awareness, which is the other superpower. And I think purpose is massively important. It's transformational for companies and for individuals. It's nothing new in the world. It's just trying to give it space now to express itself. But I think the other frontier of leadership development is awareness. People are used to the idea of, I need to become aware of something so I can change it. I think what we're talking about here is something different, which is awareness is not something you have. It is something you are. Awareness is not something that is in your mind. Awareness is what allows you to know what you're thinking. It's not in your emotions. It allows you to know what you're feeling. Awareness is a part of us as human beings. I often start leadership programs by saying, why do we need leadership? People, complex situation. So leadership is about people. What's a person? What are people? Because how can we study leadership, which is the practice of serving people, unless we think about what a human being is? So I offer a very simple model, which is designed to span cultures and thought systems, which is not radically new. The human being has a physical, a mental part, an emotional part, and awareness. And awareness is that part which allows us to see all the others, to know what's taking place. And in fact, I would say is the deepest part of ourselves. You know that moment when you wake up in the morning and there's just being. Before, and you can almost see the other stuff kick in, the mental and emotional processes. There's a moment just of being. That's awareness. And it's the thing that gives us choice and power over ourselves. It's the bit that gives us the ability to connect deeply. It's the transformational piece of ourselves. It's how we unlock patterns in our thinking and our feeling. And I think it is the frontier that we really need.
So let's go to that for a moment, because there's an inner awareness and there's an outer awareness. For instance, you talked about the trauma of the car crash. And because you've heard me speak about it, there's a trauma of my childhood. And a lot of people can have no awareness of their own trauma. as a psychological response to trauma, most people will develop something called hypervigilance. Now, hypervigilance is the hyper-awareness of everything external of myself that might be or perceived to be a threat. So there's a lot of people with a lot of external awareness and no internal awareness. And it's not unusual to look at those people and say, wow, you're paying such good attention, you're so aware. They say that if you really want to understand people who are psychic, I can tell you that 99.9% of them have gone through trauma. They've just developed hypervigilant awareness. That hypervigilance allows them to see stuff that most people just don't even notice. When I'm working with a client, they'll say, how do you remember all that? You don't take notes. How do you remember all that? I can remember the dilation of your pupils. I can remember how fast your heart was beating because I noticed it on your neck. And I can tell you exactly what you said the first time we met 10 years ago. And they're like, really? I go, yeah. But I can't go to the supermarket and get what my wife sent me for because I got to take a phone. Why the hell am I here? That's hypervigilance. So talk to us about this distinction because we need to understand we do need external awareness, absolutely, if only at a level of impact. But we also need internal awareness in order to make the shift. What's your thoughts on that?
I think the art of this is about noticing that beyond the 1,000 I am somethings we experience every day, of which there's no problem. And I'm not suggesting we suppress anything. What we feel, in fact, the opposite. We must notice what we're feeling, what we're thinking, the roles that we're playing. That's all fine. It's completely natural. But the bit that often gets lost in the I am this and I am that is the I am. And it's a little bit like coming back, if you've played squash, to the T in the center of the court. You play your stroke, you come back to the T. You play the stroke, you come back to the T. It's that sense of being, but conscious of your being. And I know this sounds super theoretical. What does it do for you if you're a leader? It's the thing that stops the emotional hangover. You have one meeting, you get into an emotional state, you go into the next meeting, you hit the people in that meeting with all of the pent-up emotion of the last one. This allows you to step back from it because you're noticing those thoughts and feelings. I think with the practice of these kind of techniques, you're then able to allow those to move into the next situation freely. One of the features of 21st century leadership, I think, is the rate of change of behavior that leaders need. I'm directive. I'm telling you what to do in this moment. Complete shift. I need to be open, listening, creating a space for you to have a dialogue in this moment. I need to be highly supportive now, but I also need to bring in some challenge. Because of the complexity and the disruption, the rate that leaders need to shift their approach is increasing. And we have leaders that have been schooled in thinking it's okay to go, I'm a people-orientated leader, I behave like this. Or I'm a task-orientated leader, I behave like that. It's nonsense. The idea of the leadership brand as being a definition of how you respond to a situation is dangerous nonsense because it means you're useless the other times when the other situations arise. So we're talking about shifting identity more deeply. First is a shift of identity to effectively what I serve and how I serve. This next shift of awareness is into I am. Deeper than these different states and modes of leadership and modes of behavior, I'm here. I'm here fully. I'm here present. I'm here and I'm enough. I'm here and I am complete and ready to move in whatever's needed. That is what we're talking about. And in that state of ready, state of open, I think what we also find is it transforms our limited thinking. Seeing the limits of our organization as all we have to care about. Seeing what Einstein called the optical delusion of consciousness. That's what awareness does. It gives us freedom in order to move freely.
And I want to underscore something you said there because it's easy for it to get misunderstood. You can correct me if I misunderstood too, of course. I think it's important for us to grasp that what Tim's saying in this I am, it's the I am present. I am willing to be present with what is going on versus the I am of addiction, which is I am the boss. I am the creative. I am the people person. I am the label. It's nothing to do with any of those I am labels, but everything to do with I am present in my form right now. which means, due to awareness, you might say, I am fully aware that I'm still pissed off from the meeting I just came out of, and I'm not going to be as present as I need to be. So how do I ground that out? How do I get grounded before I go into this meeting? Because it's better for me to say, I want to respect you all by not being late, but I want to respect you even more by being fully present. So I'm going to be 7 minutes late because I'm going to go breathe, or I'm going to go, if it's convenient, whip my socks off and stand on the ground and breathe and ground myself, or do what it takes for you, whatever that is. Look at a picture of your baby, whatever it might be that allows you to be present. That's the I am that I think is really important for us to get. I am willing to be present, and I am willing to be aware of myself when I'm not present, to call myself out on it before I get into a reactive. I talk a lot about the importance of emotion. I love emotion, and everybody's like, oh, you gotta control your emotions. Your emotions are amazing. They're beautiful. They're part of what makes you a human, and they are fuel for your life. But they are fuel used to either blow you up or blow up the situation, or they're fuel for powering the engine to where you want to go to. And that can be still very passionate and very energetic. It's not about everybody sitting around like Gandhi, although you can do that. I think what your point, Tim, that is so important is if you grab a label, you're really going to be useful in that label, but you're bloody useless in everything else. And that's the challenge. We've grown up with the evolution of the industrial ages. We've become specialists. I specialize in, this is my niche. You need to be a human generalist. And what that means is that you can step into being whatever you need to be because you're looking at people as humans, not as jobs or titles or labels.
Exactly. All of that. And what trips us up as leaders, what is challenging us, is that we keep repeating the same patterns of thinking. For example, leaders sometimes think, well, I can't find a new solution to this. Well, step out of your thinking. How do you step entirely out of your thinking? If you get triggered repeatedly by something, as we all have the habit of doing, where's the freedom from that? It's this ability to come into presence. You're noticing it, but you're not bound to it. And so it's that shift of, if you put language on it, I am experiencing anger, not I am angry. And it gives you choice then of how to deal with that. You're not suppressing it. You're actually learning what it is telling you about you and the situation. And then you're free to respond. What I'm trying to do in this kind of work is help leaders have more choice, more space, more opportunity to meet what's really happening, because we're freeing ourselves from our patterns of thinking and feeling, using them to inform and to guide, but not bound by them. So one of the exercises I use, which I'm not sure where I first heard it, but I know it wasn't mine, so I borrowed it from the universe somewhere, is to notice the space in which you experience thoughts and feelings, which is a really un-Western thing to do. We're used to thinking and feeling. We know we have them. And then you start to ask, well, where am I experiencing those? I must be experiencing them somewhere. And to notice that they must be happening in space of some sort. And then the practice is to start to notice those. I'm doing it as I speak to you. Start to notice the space in which the words come and go. And immediately there's an expansion of awareness. It's all present with the words, but I'm also present with the space around them, the space in which they're coming and they're going. The shift in identity comes from when we're not bound to our thought, thinking, feeling. You see this in Kegan's amazing work on the plateaus of human development. The social mind, the self-altering mind, the self-transforming mind. It is when we are aware, increasingly aware of our identity, how we view the world, the mental models, such that they become super useful to us because we're fluid with them.
Beautiful.
No.
We're already at the end of part 2 of the show. Before we finish, I want to make sure that people know how to find out about you and how to reach you and the wonderful work you're doing. I want to finish on a practicality, and that is this. Somebody's listening. They've read Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why. They've realized that don't really know my why. Thought I did, don't really know my why. what's a practical place if you are just, for some reason, catching the end? We talked about the positive impact and the implications of it in your organization and for the people inside of your organization. But what's the practicality right now if somebody's listening to this figuring, I want to tap into the purpose that is already within me? What would be like 1, 2, 3, and I hate to break it down that simple, what's some steps they could take to really get on that path?
Okay, so you're on your own, you don't have access to anyone else, people like us, you just got to work it. I would start with those 2 questions that I was offered at 22. I would really write about it. What do I love and why do I love it? And you keep pushing the why? What do I want to learn about and why? Keep pushing why do I want to learn about? I think out of those emerges for many people a sense of purpose and purposefulness. Step 1, come back a few days later, read it again, add some more. Second step, once you've got that sense, keep a little journal every day for just a couple of minutes. You write about what have I learned today about what is most meaningful to me. And you just write. All of us have to switch off that bit that we've been educated to have that checks everything we write and check. Do I want to say it? Do I want to be seen writing that? Switch that off and just write. I keep a journal about what have I learned today about what is most meaningful to me. And then step 3 is, once you've got that sense, talk to someone you love and trust about it.
Beautiful. Just to sort of add to what Tim just said, is when you're writing, there are 2 ways to write that will help you. One is write by hand, because that will help your brain in a different way. I've got a pen here, I write by hand. Your brain works differently. And to help with that editor, that part of your brain that's like, why do I want to say this? Things that Tim was just saying. As you write by hand, take another piece of paper and cover up what you've just written so you can never see more than the line you're writing. Just a way to push your mind out of the way or that part of your brain that wants to judge it and just writing one line at a time. If you go, well, I just can't do that. I can't read my own writing. A lot of people that way these days. And you have to type. Okay, then type, but change the font color to white. If you change the font color to white, you can't see it. So the only thing you'll see is these occasional red lines that come up where you've misspelled. And you can't go back and check them, so you have to let them go till you're done. So that's another way to get out of your own way. Of course, when you're done, you can go select all and then change the font color to whatever you want. But that's just a good way to not over-edit yourself, because this is part of the awareness, is also stepping into the awareness that you have an ego mind that is constantly trying to get things right. And right is the enemy of purpose. Right is the enemy of purpose. Right is all based on what they have told you. What all the itty-bitty pity-party inside of your coconut is telling you is right or wrong with you, that's the they. So we're pushing all that away for a moment and going through these steps, the very practical steps that Tim's just given to you. And remember, I keep rubbing this in, but Tim did it in an organization with 56,000 people and then had the data worked out by the London School of Economics, which is they're a reasonably well-known organization, to evaluate, and the impact was massive. So you might go, yeah, this is all very nice, but there's no but. As Tim said, there's no separation. Your humanity and your performance go hand in hand. If you've got shitty performance, you got shitty humanity. That's all it is. Make a culture based on that. Build a culture of belonging where people actually belong and can bring their best. You're going to get more and more performance. Tim, as we finish up, please tell people where they can find out more about you.
Yes, so the website chironleadership.com, and you can find out more about what we do and get in touch through that. Also, find me on LinkedIn and more about what we do, and you can get in touch with me through that as well. And I'm really open to all conversations. This is a discussion I think we need to have in business and organizations if we're going to get high performance, high impact on society and on nature and the environment around us, and high impact on our people.
It's beautiful. It's been a pleasure and honor having you with us, sir. I hope you'll stay with us till the end. For you, dear listener, I hope you'll remember that we always need your help in staying relevant. So we need you to rate, review, and subscribe to the show. It does make a huge difference to us. Remember that those who control the meaning for the tribe also control the movement of the tribe. That's purpose. Leaders who are committed to positively shaping the political and business landscape know that they've got to tap into what drives human behavior and that's found in the emotional source code. I'm Dov Baron. I show businesses, teams, and leaders how to harness their emotional source code to move their tribe, because unified, actualized meaning is the monolithic difference between mediocrity and greatness for individuals and for companies. Remember, we need your help in staying relevant, so please go over to wherever you tune into the show, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. It makes a huge difference to us, and we really, really appreciate it. Till next time, stay curious, my friends. Stay curious about the I am, not the label, not the I am an accountant, or I am a man, or I am any of those things, but I am present to serve. And I am Dov Baron, and I'm here to assist you tapping into your deepest meaning to reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, your life, and your leadership impact. And I am out.